In the Know, a radio program talking to the newsmakers in Ogle, Lee, DeKalb counties and beyond, keeping you in the know. Here's your host, Charles Van Horn.
Good morning and happy Sunday. Midway through May already. In studio, joining us, Rochelle City Manager Jeff Fiegenschuh. Good morning.
Good morning, Charles. It's good to be here. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Always fun to talk to you about things that are happening in and around Rochelle. City Manager job, so many hats you wear, but today we're going to talk a lot about the future of Rochelle and exciting things on the way. It has been brought up multiple times in city council meetings. You guys have adjusted even some legislation regarding data centers. Now, I know there's nothing official to be announced yet, but you guys have been working long and hard to court a data center to come to the Rochelle area.
Yeah, I think, look, data centers, I think, provide a lot of opportunity for our community and our specifically our electric utility. But we don't just focus on data centers. Tom Demmer, who does economic development for us, does a fantastic job in that realm. But we're also looking at some other businesses that are actually looking at coming here that are more industrial food processing or food distribution. Yeah. So we don't want to put all of our proverbial eggs in one basket. But I think there's some opportunities for data centers as long as it's the right deal, right? And so when we do recruit businesses to our community, we typically require what's called a development agreement, which outlines power needs or water, wastewater needs, or any type of impacts that those new businesses are going to have on the community. And we want to ensure that development pays for development. So within those agreements, we outline what the developer is responsible for. So when we were working with Wheatland Tubing at the time, we had that all spelled out in this agreement. And that worked out perfectly. In fact, we did put some money towards their infrastructure costs. And there was, I believe, an 8-year payback. And they're such a good customer on the electric side that it was paid back in 18 months. So when we do recruitment, we just want to make sure that it's as you and I have talked, we're building we're planting a tree that'll be here that we don't get to sit under. That's long-term success for the community. But we want to make sure that it's the right fit for the community and that the local people who live here aren't paying it. Development really, truly needs to pay for development.
And if you're not familiar with what a data center is, it's basically a large building full of computers doing computer stuff.
Yeah, with AI now, you're seeing data centers pop up all over the country because you've got these offsite data storage facilities. Mm-hmm. People are storing stuff in the cloud. We have 2 data centers in town now, Allstate and Northwest. They're located out in our tech center off I-39. Those are about 3 megawatts a piece. These data centers now, the ones we're talking to aren't even anywhere near like the ones that are going up on the East Coast that are like a gigawatt. The ones we're talking to now are about 15 times the size of those out in the tech park.
And obviously that will bring in tax revenue from the building and everything else. Right. But employees-wise, not a lot of staffing at these facilities.
Not a lot. It's about 10 to 15 people. And that's okay. So when you're doing economic development, you have to weigh that because obviously you want to bring jobs to the community. But I'll tell you, when we're talking to site selectors or developers or folks who are interested in bringing businesses, not just to Rochelle, but our northern region, the first thing they ask about is workforce, right? Yeah. And they want to make sure that there's a workforce there. And so we can talk about jobs, and bringing jobs is important, but you have to have people to fill those jobs. Mm-hmm. And so then we talk about housing and how many people live either in Rochelle or within our trade area or within a 40-mile radius, and is there going to be enough workforce to come and work in these jobs? So, data centers don't employ a lot of folks, but they do pay a lot of tax revenue. There gets good revenue, obviously, for the electric utility, which when the electric utility makes more money, then RMU customers like ourselves can make sure that our rates remain flat. And it's tax revenue for the school districts and a lot of other taxing bodies where they don't necessarily have to provide the services. So, again, I think, but we need a balanced approach, right? Landing a data center, I think, would be good, but we're not putting all our eggs in that basket. Yeah. We want to make sure that we're still focusing on industrial and heavy commercial. And then we also want to talk about, our current businesses and if they want to expand and how do we help them. So,
and let's talk about the current businesses. We have a greenhouse that is unfortunately going to be going away. Yeah. Don't know what the future status of that property will be. Obviously, it's set up to be a greenhouse, so I assume the hopes would be to get another organization or a business that would use that facility in place. But of course, the current owners can do whatever they want with the property. So
they can, and they were talking about an expansion a couple years ago. And when you work with some of these companies, not the ownership, but management changes a lot, and so you're dealing with different people all the time. I do know back several years ago when we were talking with them about some solar and things. They were talking about either expanding here or at that time they were talking about opening another facility, I think closer to Yorkville, where they already have a facility, and workforce was a big issue for them, and that's why they were considering that. So we didn't, to be quite honest, they didn't give us a heads up. We received a letter in the mail to our utility department because they use a lot of wastewater, and that's how we found out.
Yeah, and Tyson announced that they recently will be selling the Rochelle cold storage handling facility to a company that's already existing in town, sort of an expansion for them. So it's good to see that the doors will still be open, lights will still be on, and it sounds like, at least in the article in Business Wire, that they plan on retaining as many employees as they can. So that's all great news.
It is good news, and both companies, Lineage and Tyson, are good corporate partners, and we've had great relationships with them in the past and look forward to doing so in the future. I know Tricia, who's recording a session here today, she works with the city to host our industrial task force, and we try to meet quarterly with plant managers and HR folks and talk about what their issues are and how we can help and trends in the industry. And Tyson and Lineage have always been active participants in that organization.
And it's always good to, at least, even if you have a company that's going to be stepping aside, to have somebody else willing to step up or to keep something going. And that's one of the things that you have to do too is retaining these businesses and making sure that they're aware of benefits that you guys could possibly put together for them, especially on the energy side, because Rochelle is their own electric company. It's, I believe, the 6th largest in the state, right?
Depends on the day, 5th or 6th, yes.
Yeah.
If we get one of these data centers, we'll be the 5th.
Do we have to go knock down a couple of windmills or something to keep Rochelle up in the 5th place spot?
No, we don't want windmills.
So when it comes to keeping businesses here, you talk about being on a couple of boards and letting people know. How much contact do you have with some of the larger employers in the area on a month-to-month or year-to-year basis to be like, look, we're going to be doing this. This might help save you money here, or if you guys need to expand, we can certainly help you out.
We don't do it as much as I'd like. When Peggy Friday retired, she was really in charge of that, and so we had she would meet with them quite regularly. So it's been quarterly. We'll get back to it. Monthly, look, to say it's monthly would be great, but they're busy, we're busy.
Yeah.
Like, nobody can commit to a monthly meeting. But at least quarterly, we should be sitting down with these folks to talk about programs that are offered, like for our larger industrial customers, demand response programs, where we hire a third-party company to help them manage their high electric load during the summer. And when they basically not shut the plant down, but when they can shutter some operations when we have these peak times, that can save them money, and they get checks for that. So, there's programs like that out there that we want to promote. I'd love to meet with them more often and talk about, if they're looking at expanding. We've got the enterprise zone and all these other benefits. But even if we're not talking about incentives or what can you do for me or how can I help, it's just good to have that relationship, that personal relationship. We've got good relationships with a lot of the plants in town. Some of them we don't, they change management a lot and it's hard to keep track. But having that personal relationship or touch where that person, like the former plant manager at Silgan, we recruited him to be on the community foundation board. That's important because it keeps those folks involved in the community. Even if they don't live here, they're in the community. They see the benefits of Rochelle. They see the benefits of the chamber, the community foundation, all the organizations that are in town. They see the Christian Food Pantry doing work, and then maybe they're willing to donate to that cause. Having these people involved and integrated into our community means more than any incentive. That they see then the value of Rochelle, and they don't just put their tax dollars into our community. They put their volunteer time and more money into helping not just the city, but the organizations we serve.
Now, we talked earlier at the start of the conversation about eggs in one basket and data centers and all that stuff. Let's talk long-term expansion, especially on the business industrial side. Rochelle has pretty much made it clear that there is a good chunk of property along the interstates, the expansion of and reinforcement of some of the roads for the heavier truck traffic.
Yeah.
You guys definitely have an eye on the future. And even though they're fields now, you guys really do think the potential is there to expand. My question is, how long does that process take? Like, where does it start when you guys, because obviously the city doesn't own all of those properties that you're expanding up against, but say that there's a hypothetical 150 acres sitting there that's owned by somebody. and you're pretty sure the owner would definitely be willing to part ways with it for development of some kind or another. How does that conversation start? Who contacts whom? And, they talked before, I remember speaking to the mayor about, company X.
Right.
Like, when is the next company X, and what's the timeline in something like that? So, like, say, starting today, how does that conversation start?
Every project is different, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to use Wheatland Tubing as an example, right?
Okay.
Because that was our most recent. And so they had purchased the old Nippon Shario facility. We had heard about it. And then when they were comfortable, they reached out to former economic development director Jason Anderson and made those connections. And then Jason made the connections with staff, and we started talking about, if they were going to fill the buildings, what their needs were. And then it's just really started happening quickly. They pulled in their lawyers and worked out, they wanted an expansion of the enterprise zone. So Jason and I and the mayor and some other folks.
And how long timeline was that?
That was actually not too bad. That one only took, if I remember correctly, about 18 months from when they started talking to now. We had a deal in place, but we couldn't name the business right. And people were like, oh, it's not really coming, blah, blah. Like, these companies don't want their names out there until they're ready to have their names out there. And we're respectful of that. But in my world, it was about 18 months, which is quick. Yeah. Right. We do get businesses like we were looking at an auto transload facility that was looking at coming here. Jason and Tom had reached out to Jason and Tom, and those guys had worked that project for 2 years before I finally got involved. Yeah, because it was just conversations, and these developers are looking at this site, and maybe next month or 2 months later they're looking at this site, and they're always looking because they have to maximize their profits. Like, they're not in business for any other reason but to make a profit. So their job is to maximize that. So there's lots of conversations going on. And when I got involved, it was probably an 8-month process before they finally pulled out and said, with the tariffs and all this other stuff, we're just indefinitely postponing this project. And they weren't just looking at Rochelle. They were looking at other states, and then they were looking at other locations closer to Chicago. So we're competing with all of these folks, and it takes them a long time to make decisions. So those are ones where there's a lot of work going on. The average person doesn't see it. People, they don't see all this work that we're doing. Yeah, we never landed it.
And that's the part that intrigues me, is when somebody, and you always get it every other year or so, somebody looks at the budget and they go, well, they spent so much money in economic development. What happens? Some of that stuff is spent and just doesn't come to fruition. You're planting a lot of seeds in the ground.
We are.
And, I know you probably don't want to say out loud, but how many irons in the fire right now are there of things where you've got people sniffing, you've got portfolios sent back and forth, maybe a lawyer call or two, and I mean, it's got to be a lot of balls in the air you're juggling.
So it doesn't usually get to me unless it's a more serious project where I need to be brought in, where we're talking serious negotiations. And so I'm involved in 4 right now. Yeah. That doesn't sound like a lot, but Tom Demmer and the number of folks he's working with right now, again, he's handling all of that. And then when they're ready to maybe take the next step, he'll bring me in.
Is one of them Cracker Barrel?
No.
See, there we go.
Well, let's put it this way. So let's talk about Cracker Barrel. So everybody wants a Cracker Barrel, and that would be great. We'd love to have them in our community, and they're welcome to our community.
It's become a running joke, so you know.
But we also have the Butterfly, and we have all these other restaurants in town that people can go to. And companies like Cracker Barrel are no different than a lot of these other companies. They don't look at Rochelle. They look at our retail trade area, and they look at the amount of dollars generated in that area, because they know that Rochelle isn't going to be just their that doesn't sustain them. And if there's not enough dollars, they're not coming. Yeah. That's just the simple point of it.
And that goes into whether it's retail, restaurant, or industry, even with freight. If it doesn't make financial sense to move products from here or to here, they're not going to pull the trigger on it.
They're not. But we're also very, very blessed. A lot of, you and I were talking beforehand about visioning. Rochelle has been very blessed to have a lot of folks in the past with great vision, from current and past mayors and council members to staff members. And I'm not just talking city managers. I'm talking economic development directors. I'm talking utility folks, community development. We've had a lot of folks involved in positions of authority or leadership that have had great vision. And one of the reasons we're getting inquiries, one of the reasons we have a lot of folks looking at Rochelle is they said, let's expand, Let's get into the rail business. Let's expand rail. Or back in 2008, let's put up a data center and let's extend fiber and have fiber throughout our whole community. Let's expand our electric utility. Back in I hope Tom McDermott doesn't get mad at me for this because I don't remember the exact date. I think 1896, somewhere around there. Yeah. Somebody said, let's buy a power company. Let's buy the power company. So a lot of great vision has led to where we're at today, and I'm just glad to be part of it. But it takes a team. All of this stuff we're talking about is a lot of teamwork, a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. But my vision for this community as the city manager is it's the Athenian oath. I really believe that I have a responsibility to leave this town better than I found it. Now, some people might say you spend more money since you've been here and blah, blah, blah. And fair. That's fair. I'm willing to take those criticisms. But we also have top-notch services. We have top-notch infrastructure. One of the reasons we spend more now is because we're reinvesting in infrastructure.
Yeah.
So when it rains, we don't have all the flooding issues. We don't have as many water main breaks. We can service Wheatland Tubing when they come to our community and bring jobs and investment. So
and again, that windstorm, you guys had most of the lights on in an amount of time that would have taken a large regional utility or more, even more time to put
I won't say anything. We work well with ComEd, so I won't say anything negative at all. And they're just a different animal. They've got such a larger service territory. But I will tell you, Blake and his crew and those linemen did a rock star job at that. And that is exactly why we're so blessed to have a local utility. And when people have questions, they're not calling a 1-800 number. A lot of them have my cell number. They have Blake's cell number at a minimum. Otherwise, they can call the mayor and any one of our council members, or some of them probably even know the lineman. So we're very blessed, very, very blessed.
City Manager Jeff Fiegenschuh, I promise one day they'll at least name part of a roadway after you.
They don't have to do that. But my job would be to make sure that roadway is built and built to the best, to the highest standards, so that in 100 years when I'm long forgotten, or even in 10 years after I retire when I'm long forgotten, that road is utilized and serving the people of Rochelle.
My goal is to get a sewage lift station named after me. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening to this week's In the Know. The program returns next week at this time with another great conversation with someone from your community.